Welcome to a soothing yoga practice. In this practice, we're going to stay on the floor for all of our poses and movements. So if you're looking for something more energetic, you might look for a video elsewhere. We'll start on the back body, and before we get down, have a strap and 2 blankets nearby. And go ahead and lay down on the back body, perhaps using one of the blankets is what I like to call a blanket pillow underneath the head, if you like a little additional support for your neck and your head. Go ahead and find your way into Supta Tadasana, reclined mountain pose. And let both of your legs stretch long. Let the arms be a comfortable distance away from the hips. Either palms face up or down, whichever feels more grounding and supportive for you. Allow the body to be passive and restful. Finding your way into your own seat of silence. And as you drift into this stillness, notice the ease of the flow of the breath. Make any micro adjustments that you feel your body is calling out for. So the real estate of the back of the body is making as much contact with the floor as possible. Releasing tension from the fingers and the toes, from the belly, the chest, the shoulders. Feeling an openness of your throat and a relaxed, calm facial expression. And keeping the back of the skull making good contact with the floor, allow the head to roll from right to left, resisting the temptation for any lifting of the head. So you can feel a massage on the back of the skull. And whatever speed you're going at, slow it down. And the next time the face is coming back through center, go ahead and bring that motion to stillness and stand both of your feet. You might pick up your hips to bring the waist down onto the floor so the spine feels quite long. And raise both of your hands up toward the ceiling, palms facing one another. Inside edges of the fingers are touching, and the wrists are reaching long, the fingers are reaching long. Again, chin slightly in toward the chest, and allow your straight or straight-ish arms to come behind the back of the head. Some of you, your thumbs will touch the floor. For some of you, that's not going to be in your practice today. And then bring the arms straight back up again, and then allow the arms to come out to the side at shoulder height. Return the arms reaching straight up overhead, fingers pointing toward the ceiling. Release the arms behind the back of the head, feeling that long stretch and the opening of the armpits. Raise the arms back up again so you can hold opposite elbows and let the arms sway from side to side. We'll start this action with the back body quite tethered down to the floor. The arms are going from side to side so you feel the big stretch on the outside edge of your shoulders. And then go ahead and allow a bit of a spinal twist to occur where you pick up one scapula and the other as the arms sway from side to side. If your head feels better going with the arms, you can do that. Or maybe you can keep the gaze looking straight up toward the ceiling. Now the next time the arms are over to the right, let the legs go to the left. And then everything comes back up through center and over to the opposite side. Nice, slow, flowing motion from side to side. If you'd like for your head and your neck to get involved, the head can go in the same direction as the knees. And one more time to whichever side you're going to. Come up through the center and float all of your limbs up toward the ceiling. Let the wrists be very, very relaxed. Let the ankles be relaxed. And now let the arms and the legs go in the opposite direction. We were doing this just a moment ago, and the elbows and the knees were bent. And I don't expect that you're going to go very far here, but just a little bit of motion from side to side with your extended limbs. Coming back through center with everything pointing up toward the ceiling, let's bring the feet down onto the floor with bent knees and bring the right knee in toward the chest, clasping the hands around the outside of the shin or the underbelly of the thigh, and let the left leg come down straight on the floor. Hugging in that femur bone toward the chest. And release the left hand down onto the floor as the right arm continues to hold on to the leg, and let the right leg come over to the right side. Making your fewest fibers fired, relaxing where you can. Bring that leg up to center. Go ahead and step the right foot down onto the floor. Left knee into the chest, clasped hands around the outside of the shin or the thigh, and then let the right leg come down flat on the floor. So the back of the leg is pressing away. The calf muscle is down on the floor, the heel is down on the floor. Hugging in the left leg, let the right hand come down onto the floor, and the left hand helps the knee over to the side, feeling that opening of the hips. And bring that leg back up. You'll bring both knees into the chest and have your hands out to the side like outriggers. Palms face down, keeping the legs together. Can you let the legs sway from side to side? And this is the very beginning of class. We're just warming up the body, so no need to go into full double leg spinal twist. We're just getting a little bit of twisting action in the hips, letting the spine come along, waking up the torso. And coming back through center, float both of your feet up and flex your ankles mightily. As you flex your ankles, can you try to spread your toes? And then send your feet around in a circular motion with your toes flared open. And reverse the direction of the circle. And go ahead and pedal the feet. So you're finding that opening of the fronts of the ankles. You're also feeling a little bit of a hamstring stretch and a stretch all the way down into the calf muscle. Now leave the left leg up, bringing the right leg down onto the floor. And the leg is more or less straight. Maybe there's a little bit of bend to the knee. And start to circle around that straight or straight-ish leg. And as you create these circles, or maybe an oval, go ahead and let that circle grow a little larger and a little larger. If you feel any heavy-duty clunking from your hip, Maybe you'll keep your circle more like an oval and not let the leg come out too far from the midline. And if possible, you're looking for a nice big circle, as long as there's no strain or pain involved in this. And when you get to your largest circle you're going to make at this point, go ahead and pause for a moment and then reverse the direction of that large circle. And then with each circle you make, you'll make that smaller and smaller and smaller. And then finally bend that left knee, bringing the foot down onto the floor. Send up the right leg, flexing the ankle and having the toes well enough in your line of vision that you feel a good stretch of the back of the calf muscle and your hamstrings. Now, trying to let most of the body relax, go ahead and start that circular motion, and we're starting small and letting the circle grow larger with each revolution of the leg. And again, sometimes there's clunking involved, and usually it's not painful. If it is, you need to stop and wait for us to go into our next move. But if it's bothering you, you might keep the leg a little bit closer to the midline. When you get to your largest circle, go ahead and pause the motion for a moment and then reverse the direction of the circle. And we're making the circle smaller and smaller, still keeping at least a gentle flexation in the ankle until it's quite small. And then we'll bend the right knee, bringing the right foot down onto the floor and sending the left leg back up again. With the left leg aerial, arms out to the sides, palms face down like ballast. Let the hips be heavy and let that straight-ish left leg cross the midline of the body, keeping the left hip down. Now the intensity is going to grow very quickly. So it's as if you start to feel the intensity, that's enough. Easy flow of breath as you feel this big stretch in the tissues that support the left IT band. And feeling the back body making great contact with the floor, slowly bring that straight left leg out to its own side, coming out as far as it feels comfortable, and then slowly bring that leg back up again, and we'll bend the left knee, left foot touches down, right leg up, and see if you can feel like a leveling off of your hips. Make sure you're not hiking up that right hip at all, and let that straight or straight-ish leg cross the midline of the body. Try to pour some energy and weight of the right hip down on the floor as that leg crosses the midline, and keep an even, steady flow of breath. We'll slowly bring that leg back up to center and then let it come out to its own side, balancing the body, keeping from tipping over. Maybe a greater flexation of that ankle so you can press energy out through the heel. Inhale to bring that leg all the way back up, and we'll hug both knees into the chest and rock from side to side. And coming back through center, feet touch down onto the floor and let the legs go long. We'll all meet up in Supta Tadasana, reclined mountain pose. Arms right alongside the torso, palms face down. And lift the right straight leg and left arm, allowing those limbs to come up all the way to their to their extreme ability. Maybe the thumb can touch the floor, maybe not. And slowly let that set of limbs travel all the way down. And then left leg, right arm float up and back down. And we'll continue with that motion, opposite arm and leg lifts. And as you do this, see if you can notice where the energy emanates from. How do you get that leg started to travel up? And this will be the last time, whichever limbs are floating up, let them come all the way down, no rush involved here. And relax the whole body as if it is melting down into the floor. By now you may have warmed the space below the back body. And we'll stand both of our feet and reach for the strap, lassoing both of your feet and allowing the legs to come into reclined wide angle pose. As long as you can keep the strap on your feet, you can have a pretty serious flexation of the ankles again, and then let the legs come together and go apart. And come together and go apart. We're repeating this motion back and forth. So you can feel that really big stretch, especially of the inside hamstring and the groins. The abductors and adductors are working. And the next time the legs are wide, bring them in just a little bit closer to one another, and then bend one knee, and then straighten both legs and bend the other knee. So we're just going back and forth from side to side, holding the legs up. One leg is straight as the other bends, and then coming back to both legs straight, and then going to the other side. Bend one knee, keep the other straight. And the next time both of your legs are straight, go back to that action of both legs going simultaneously into reclined wide angle pose. And when the legs finally come together, bend the knees well enough that you can reach for the strap. Set the strap aside. It will bring the outside of the left ankle over the bottom of the right femur bone into this 4 square configuration of the legs. And let the legs go from side to side. See if you can keep that flexation in the left aerial ankle and a little bit of pressure on the left knee is forcing that knee to go away from its own shoulder. So we don't use the hands to do that, we just use the strength of the legs to do that. Letting the legs go from side to side, come back through center. Make sure your spine feels like it's in a long line. And then bring the right knee in toward the chest and back down again. So we're keeping the legs in this 4 square configuration as they come in and out in reverse crunches. And the next time that foot steps down, keep the configuration of the legs and see if you can lift your hips any amount off the floor and return them back down. And lift up any amount and return them back down. And 2 more times if you can do it. Lifting and lowering, and lifting and lowering. And finally untangle the legs and we'll go over to the second side. This time the outside of the right ankle is over left knee. keeping the flexed right ankle. Right knee is pressing away from its own shoulder, and then let the leg sway from side to side. And try to let the body make the decision about how far you can go. So instead of setting up this routine of motion that just repeats itself, it's like every time you make the motion, you're doing it anew. Some of you might be able to get the right knee down toward the floor, and then going over to the other side, maybe the right foot can come down onto the floor. And that won't be in everybody's practice arena today. But just know that it might be possible. Okay, coming up through center again, make sure the spine feels reset and long, and then bring the left knee in toward the chest and return the foot back down to the floor. In and out. Getting the abdomen to get a good workout, and also many of you are going to be feeling this in the right hip. And one more time, bringing the knee in, setting the foot back down onto the floor, lift the hips up off the floor and come back down. So we're now coming up into a full bridge. This is just a little bit of lifting of the hips, and make sure that your left foot is placed somewhere where it's comfortable for this to be happening, especially for your left knee. Okay, and then finally setting the hips back down, let's untangle the legs, heel toe the feet apart until the edges of your feet find the outside edges of the mat, and let the legs sway again from side to side. An easy flowing motion. And when the legs are over on the right side, you might try picking up the left hip a little bit and maybe bringing the left arm up overhead. So the right hip is down on the floor, the left hip is lifting, the left knee is reaching long, and the fingertips of the left hand are reaching up away from the knee. Slowly return the shoulder down, bring the arm down, the legs come back, and they flip over to the left side, lifting up the left hip. Maybe the right arm can reach up overhead, so the fingertips are reaching away from the knee. And then gently let down the hip, bring down the arm, bring both knees in toward the chest, and float the feet up with bent knees, coming into happy baby pose. The soles of the feet can be parallel with the ceiling. You can be holding onto your lower legs. Maybe you hold onto the outside edges of your feet, or the peace fingers can be wrapped around the big toes. And when you get there, perhaps rocking from side to side. Now, some of you will be happy to get any rocking together that you can do, and others of you are going to be able to touch down one knee to the floor and then go to the other side. And coming back through center, release the hold of the hands. Bring the hands to the outside edges of the shin bone. Help the legs together. Bend the knees so the feet come down onto the floor. And let's reach for the strap again. Bringing the strap around the bottom of the left foot, letting the right leg go long. Supta Pada Gustasana 1, reclined big toe pose on the back. If your practice doesn't necessitate you having a strap, you might hold on to your big toe, again with your peace fingers. But if that's too much of a stretch for this soothing, relaxing class, go ahead and use the strap. Here we are, Supta Pada Gustasana 1. The left leg is aerial, energy pressing up through the heel of that foot. Let's take the leg across the midline of the body just a little bit, And then opening up the shoulder blades on the back, let's see if we can bring that leg out to its own side, Supta Padangusthasana 2, letting the leg come out, and can the navel at the same time track over toward the right, helping to keep that right side of the body tethered down to the floor. Inhale and bring the strap up along with the leg. We'll open up the strap with both hands, snake in the right foot, and return the left back leg down onto the floor. So we have left leg down to the floor, right leg up. The left arm can be out to the side. I like to practice Supta Padangusthasana just holding on with one hand so that the other side of the body can be kind of coaxed into relaxing. Supta Padangusthasana 1, we'll start by bringing that straight right leg over the midline a little bit, and then coming back through center, very slowly allow the leg to come out to its own side to Supta Padangusthasana 2. Now see what you can do about cutting down some energy in that right hip. So it's keeping the hips more or less level. And when you're ready to come out, inhale to bring that leg all the way back up again, and you'll bend the knee enough so that you can bring the strap off of the back of the foot, set the strap aside, and again, hug both knees into the chest and rock gently from side to side. And next we're coming up to a seated position. Yogi's choice, because it's always yogi's choice. If you rock up or if you'd like to roll over onto one side to come up. In whatever position you want to come into, change the position of your legs. So you're coming into the more unnatural way of sitting. If in this seated position your knees are not more or less down and there's any tension in the groins, please sit up on a blanket or a bolster or anything else you have, a pillow, anything to get your hips up a little bit higher. And as we take this seated position, slowly let your shoulders come up to your ears. And we're going to hold the shoulders up to the ears as you continue with an even, simple, flowing breath. So the shoulders are staying up. You're trying to relax your fingers and your toes. Keep the facial expression soft. Keep the gaze soft. Shoulders are staying up. See if after a while it can feel like they're just kind of floating up. The sternum and the top of the chest feel buoyant. The spine feels long. And we'll take a few more seconds of the shoulders up. And before you start to release them down, I just want to give this cue that we're going to go very slowly in bringing the shoulders down. So a little bit more hugging up of the shoulders, and now start to release, but let it happen really slowly. Very slowly, bringing the shoulders back down. And we'll take the left hand onto the right knee, right hand behind the back body, coming into a spinal twist. Let the sternum come forward just a little bit, shoulders back and down. The right hand is behind you to help with the lift of the front of the chest. And make sure that the twist is starting low in your hips. And slowly come out of that twist, and we'll go over to the second side. Right hand to left knee, left hand behind the back body. Bring the sternum up just a little. Start the twist really low, and see if you can follow that twist all the way up the spine. And the last thing to turn is your head with an even, steady flow of breath. And uncoiling from that twist slowly. Let's change the cross of the legs. Hands on the floor in front of you. And get a little bit of rocking action going, but have the palms really well situated on the floor. So that's helping to protect the low back. And maybe for some of you, the hands will come out a little bit further. But keep the rocking action going from side to side. And then when the spine is right in the center of the body, use the strength of the hands and the arms to come all the way up. We'll bring the hands together at heart center, Namaste Asana. Raise the arms up overhead. See if you can look up at your hands. Separate the hands, and let's come into hitchhiker pose. With the thumbs reaching up, but the pads of the fingers are touching the inside edges of your palms. The pads of the fingers, yeah. And reach those thumbs up, but drop the chin into the chest. Keep the thumbs reaching, keep the arms reaching, and keep the chin coming down, down, down. Just a few more breaths like this. And then raise the chin, bend the elbows, bring the arms down. And we'll set the right hand outside of the left hip, down on the floor, but get the hand a good distance away so you can feel this length of the side body. Opposite arm up overhead. See if you can get your upper arm to come right alongside the ear, and turn the torso so that the sternum is turning with the arm that's opening up. Now, is it possible to bend and straighten the standing arm? And if your hip lifts up a little bit, if the left hip comes up a little, that's okay. But we're really trying to keep it down. So we're trying to weight that side of the body down. Inhale to come all the way up with a long stretch. And we'll set down now the left hand in line with the hip, but well outside of the hip. Opposite arm, right arm is reaching up, and try to rotate the torso open a bit so you can bend and straighten the elbow. Now, we're not doing a big bend of the elbow. Some of you might be able to get the elbow all the way down to the floor, but that's not important. It's more important that you find a buoyancy in the top of the chest as we do this, and trying to sink energy down in the right hip. And all the way back up again, resting the hands on the knees. Let's bring the torso around in a circular motion. And when you get to a good spot, you can pause for just a moment and then reverse the direction of the circle. And one more time, all the way around, coming back through center. I have my right foot in, and I'm going to bring my left leg out to the side for half-seated wide-angle pose. Now, this is a very asymmetric pose, but we're looking for a little symmetry and how much weight is coming down in the hips. Go ahead and bring the hands down onto the floor and try to let the skin of the hips kind of sink back without rounding the back. See if you can bring your hands a little bit further forward and perhaps a little bit of gentle pulsing up and down. Now, as I do this, I want my knee to be pointing more or less straight up and my toes to be pointing straight up. If there's a reason that you're not doing that, then I respect that. Go ahead and use your body intelligence for what you really need to do. And some of you will be able to walk the hands much further forward. Sorry, I'm coming a little bit out of frame here, but coming forward with a long spine. I'm up on spider fingers, keeping my sternum lifting, which keeps my spine straight-ish. And I'm bowing forward And then walking the hands all the way back up to grab underneath the knee, help that leg in, and send the right leg out to the side. It takes a few moments to get settled in this pose. And then hands down onto the floor, coming forward for a little bowing action in and out. And perhaps this is where you want to continue working, and some of you will bring the hands further forward, maybe up onto spider fingers, but keep something on the floor as you're coming forward, 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 letting the sternum come forward, feigning almost a back bend so that you can keep that spine as straight as possible. And then slowly walking the hands all the way back in again. We'll grab underneath that leg to help the leg in. And we're going to come down onto the belly next. I'm opening up one of my blankets so I can have a little padding under my hips. And roll onto the belly. Stacking both of the hands, forehead down onto the stacked hands, and let the hips sway from side to side. And you can release from that movement of the sway of the legs and bring the legs almost together so that they are parallel to one another, almost parallel to one another, and alternate bringing one heel in and then the other. We're just bending up the knees, bringing one heel in and the other, alternating back and forth, being careful, using your body intelligence not to stub your toe as you release the foot down to the floor. And we'll stop with that movement for just a moment to come up into either Sphinx pose, where the upper arms are perpendicular to the floor, but if that's too much for your low back, you bring your elbows a little bit further forward. So more of the low ribs are making contact with the floor. So again, yogi's choice there for whatever's going to work best for you. The legs are pretty close together. And for those of you who can tolerate this in the low back, I'm pressing energy down into the elbows, keeping the chin up off of the collarbones, shoulders away from the ears, and going back to the motion that we were doing, bringing the heels in toward the hips. Just alternating the legs, one and then the other. And some of you are going to feel a little bit of a stretching of your quadricep muscles as we do this. And certainly we're using our hamstrings to bring the legs in. And then bring that motion to stillness and drop down a bit, bringing the arms into cricket pose. The elbows are up, the palms are down, and I'm staying down for the most part here so I can look underneath one of my arms and then underneath the other. Going back and forth, side to side here, and some of you may choose to stay low, and some of you will be able to start to come up a little so you can look over one shoulder and then drop down out of the pose to come up to look over the other shoulder. Dropping down and coming up to opposite side. And alternate back and forth at your own slow, steady, thoughtful pace. And that'll be the last time coming up on one side, dropping all the way down. Go ahead and stack your hands in the opposite order, forehead down onto the stacked hands, bend up the knees. Now you can get a little distance between the knees and allow the legs to windshield from side to side. Releasing tension from the low back. And again, releasing any tension from the whole body as you can. next we're going to make our way up to all fours. So let go of that movement, toes come down to the floor, legs come toward one another. Bring the hands well back so the thumbnails are touching the ribs, and start to come up, bending at the waist and the hips, and send the hips all the way back to child's pose. If for some reason it's not comfortable for you to come into child's pose, then you can be practicing puppy pose perhaps, with the arms forward and the head down. For those coming into Balasana, child's pose, go ahead and see if you can release the hips down to your heels and let the body drape over the legs. The arms might be extended forward, or maybe bring the index finger back so the index finger can lay right alongside the outside edge of your foot. Inhale to come up, and I'm going to use the blanket underneath my knees so that my knees can be a little bit more comfortable in all fours. And from all fours, I'm bringing my knees together so I can bring my right foot forward and sink my hips down into a low lunge. Hips are down, curl the back toes under, bring that back knee up off the floor. And we'll plant the left hand down and reach the right arm up. Trying to stay low in your lunge with your hips if you can, and then bring that hand all the way down, back knee touches down, unflip the back toes, front foot back to meet the back foot, bringing the left foot forward, sinking down into the lunge. Right hand stays down on the floor, left arm reaches up. And bring that hand all the way down. And let's travel the hips back and forth a few times. I'm coming up a little bit higher on my fingers. If you have blocks nearby, this will be a good opportunity to put blocks underneath your fingers. I didn't mention having blocks at the beginning of class, so I'm doing my best not to use them, okay? And travel the hips back, drag the front foot back to meet the back foot. The right foot comes forward so we can travel the hips back and forth a few times on the side. And the next time the hips come back, go ahead and get your hands well planted on the foot. Draw the foot all the way back, and we'll drop down into Sphinx pose. You can have your knees underneath your hips, and we'll practice a few rounds of cat-cow from Sphinx pose. Lifting the tailbone and the chin at the same time, letting the sternum come forward, 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 and then dropping the head, bringing the chin into the chest and tucking the tail at the same time. I like to practice cat-cow in Sphinx pose because of how much you can open up the back body. The area around the scapula can get a really good stretch as we come into cat. And it's a little bit easier on the wrists. And then finally, coming all the way back up to all fours, we'll bring the knees together again with the left arm forward like a karate chop and the right leg back, and lift and lower a few times. Lifting and lowering into bird dog pose and back down, strengthening the low back. And the next time that set of limbs comes down, bring the knee down, send the left leg back, right arm forward, and lift and lower. one last time if you can do it, lifting, lowering, and set the knee down. We'll bring the knees to be underneath the hips and the hands a little bit in front of the shoulders so we can bring the whole torso around in a circular motion. And once you get this motion organized, see if you can really press your hips well out to the sides. Some of you will come all the way down through child's pose, feeling that full length of the spine as you come all the way around, hip going over to its own side. And the next time you come down through child's pose or back into all fours, reverse the direction of the circle. And when you come back up to all fours, we'll bring the hands back just a little bit so we can keep a good press of the arms, but drop the chin into the chest. And we're keeping the arms pressing down, shoulders are stable here, but keep bringing the chin more into the chest as if you're dropping the crown of the head down toward the floor. And finally, lift the chin up, and we'll walk our knees over to one side so we can drop down on our hips, and it's time for an inversion. So my students like to practice either shoulder stand or Viparita Karani. If you're practicing shoulder stand, hopefully if you're doing a full shoulder stand, you know how to use your props. I'm not teaching that in this class. Otherwise, you should be practicing half shoulder stand. For those of you practicing Viparita Karani, if you have a wall nearby, that'd be great. I have a very long torso, and I practice with a bolster and 2 blankets. I am 5'6", with a long torso, as I said. So when I set up for this, I can withstand a pretty good back bend. Some of you might use your block side by side, and then 1 blanket on top, and that pretty much is the same as a bolster. And some of you might be able to have 2 blankets on top, so the hips are elevated and the legs go up. The definition of an inversion is for the hips and the legs to be higher than the heart. So getting the hips up any amount is great. And for those of you practicing Viparita Karani, try not to sink down too much in the chest, but have a little bit of buoyancy. It doesn't have to feel like a full-on back bend, but just a little bit of buoyancy in the top of the chest to keep some aliveness, some prana, some awareness in the chest. Make sure the neck and the collarbones feel rather open. And that there's an ease of flow of breath. You might like to practice a little bit of movement with the feet, maybe great movement with the legs. If you feel like you have really opened up the groins a lot or opened up the hips a lot in class, it can feel good to take an eagle pose. And to take an eagle pose, you need to have the knees well bent to be able to wrap that extra foot all the way around the ankle. And certainly if you practice on one side, I hope you practice on the other, unless there's a reason for not doing that. But at least for a few moments during your inversion, find some time to rest in stillness. if you've been practicing half shoulder stand, you might let it come out by touching plow pose. And if you have come into Viparita Karani with a lot of height underneath your hips, to come out of the pose, please press those props away from your hips instead of trying to come out to one side or the other. It's just a safer way to come out of the pose. And it's time to set up for Shavasana. Coming onto the back body, bringing some warmth in either clothing or props, socks, anything that's going to help your body feel a little bit better supported and able to be in the pose without bringing too much attention to things that aren't quite right or feeling good for you. Maybe an eye pillow over the eyes or a piece of clothing over the eyes. And settling onto the back body. Some of you I know like to put a little height underneath your calf muscles or underneath the knees for support of the low back. After settling into that pose and making the nano adjustments necessary to feel very supported, go ahead and bring the attention to the breath. Just noticing where it's coming in and maybe following it down in its journey, where it nourishes the body and returns back out. Noticing movement that comes with the body, movement of the diaphragm, movement of the chest. And letting this time be an integration of the movement that you have just accomplished. Attempting to let the mind be in this moment, knowing that it does its work, thinking of other things, and just noticing where the mind goes, and then perhaps bringing it back to this breath, this moment. Starting the transition from the shape you are in now by bringing some movement in, maybe with a little deeper breath. Noticing where you choose to move the body. Eventually finding a way to roll over onto a side. And press yourselves up to a seated position. Bringing the hands together at heart center. And letting the sternum reach forward for the thumbs. Crown of the head reaching for the ceiling. and the eyes soft, whether open or closed. May all beings be free from fear and harm. May we all be happy just the way we are. May we all be at peace, whatever comes. And may we rest gently in the softness of our own hearts. Borrowed from my good teacher, Sarah Baumert. You can bring the hands behind the back body, holding on to either wrist, and fold forward into Yoga Mudra. Inhale to come up. Namaste.